Welcome back to Sleeping with History. Today, we're going to go over 5 epic battles that shaped the world. As always, please do let me know where you're listening or watching from. Now, let's get into the video. These battles were not just clashes of soldiers, they were turning points where entire cultures rose or fell, where rulers gambled everything, and where the shape of continents shifted forever. Before gunpowder, before steel cannons, and before the modern world, human conflict lived in the swing of swords, the strength of shield walls, the thunder of chariots, and the decisions of commanders who had only minutes to act. Each battle you're about to hear shaped the lives of millions who never stepped foot onto those fields. Today we're going through 5 of the most important and dramatic battles in ancient and medieval history. Only the eras of bronze, iron, and steel. Some of these battles feel almost unreal in their scale. Others changed whole nations in a single day. All of them left marks we will still see in borders, languages, religions, and cultures around the world. This is a journey across thousands of years, from narrow mountain passes to open plains, from forest ambushes to the fall of entire cities. Each battle is its own story, shaped by fear, ambition, courage, and decisions made under pressure no one should ever face. Act 1. The Battle of Thermopylae. The narrow pass at Thermopylae was never meant to hold back an empire, yet it became the place where a small Greek force faced a massive Persian invasion. The pass itself was the key. Mountains pressed tightly on both sides, leaving only a thin strip of land wide enough for a few men to stand shoulder to shoulder. No matter how large the Persian army was, they could only attack through the bottleneck. King Leonidas of Sparta arrived there with about 7,000 Greek soldiers. They knew they weren't facing just another army. The Persian king Xerxes had gathered forces from across his empire, infantry, cavalry, archers, and elite warriors known as the Immortals. Ancient writers described it as one of the largest armies ever assembled. Even if the numbers were exaggerated, the Greeks understood the scale and the danger. The Greek strategy was simple but risky. They would block the pass long enough for the rest of Greece to prepare its defenses. A delay of even a few days could change the outcome of the entire invasion. Leonidas took the front line with the Spartans, standing beside allies from regions across Greece. Their shields locked tightly together, forming a wall that could take the first shock of Persian attacks. The Persians launched wave after wave of soldiers at the narrow pass. Each wave crashed against the Greek line, but the confined space worked in the Greeks' favor. The Persians couldn't use their full numbers, and the Greeks held firm. Shield pressure, steady formation, and discipline made the difference. Even the Immortals, known for their skill and status, struggled to break the line. For 2 days, the Greeks pushed back attacks that should have overwhelmed them. Their narrow ground, the heavy Greek armor, and their coordination made every advance costly for the Persians. But Thermopylae had a weakness. A local man revealed a hidden mountain trail that led behind the Greek position. Xerxes sent troops through that path to outflank the defenders. Leonidas learned about the maneuver before it was too late. He dismissed most of the Greek forces, keeping only 300 Spartans and a small group of Thespians and Thebans who refused to leave. They formed their final line deeper in the pass, determined to buy a few more hours. When the Persians attacked from both front and rear, the defenders were surrounded. The final stand was brutal and direct. Spear shafts snapped, shields cracked. The Greeks fought until their weapons broke, then continued with swords and whatever they could grab. Their goal wasn't victory, it was time. Every moment they held the Persians there allowed the Greek cities to gather fleets and prepare for later battles. Thermopylae didn't stop the invasion, but it changed its pace. The courage of the defenders became a rallying point across Greece. Within a year, the Persians faced a united Greek force at sea and on land. Thermopylae became a symbol of resistance, showing how a small force positioned well could challenge an entire empire long enough to shift the curse of war. Act 2. The Siege of Troy. Long before written chronicles were common, stories traveled by memory, carried by travelers, merchants, and singers. The Siege of Troy lives in that space between history and legend. But behind the larger-than-life tales, there was a real conflict during the Bronze Age that changed the world around the Aegean. Troy stood near the narrow strait that connected the Aegean Sea to the Black Sea. Any power controlling that region controlled trade routes, grain shipments, and movement between continents. Its location alone made it valuable, and powerful kingdoms often watched with interest. Archaeology confirms that Troy was a fortified city with massive walls, built in layers over many centuries. By the late Bronze Age, the region was full of rival powers fighting over resources, territory, and influence. Tensions were constant. Trade could turn into conflict quickly. Armies moved across plains that had seen generations of war. The conflict, remembered as the Trojan War, began when rival powers from the Greek mainland launched a major expedition across the sea. The reasons given in later stories revolve around personal drama, but the core likely had more to do with the control of trade and political alliances. A coalition of Greek city-states gathered ships, warriors, and supplies for a long campaign. When they reached the coast near Troy, they faced a city built for siege defense. High walls, strong gates, and experienced defenders forced the Greeks to establish a long-term camp. Bronze Age warfare moved slowly. Armies relied on manual labor to build earthworks, dig trenches, maintain supply lines, and keep ships in working order. A siege wasn't a single event. It was a grinding stalemate shaped by disease, weather, morale, and changes in leadership. Raids and counter-raids happened often. Infantry clashed near the walls, chariots charged across open ground, and archers looked for any weakness. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage. The Greeks controlled the coastline, but couldn't break the fortifications. The Trojans held the city, but couldn't push the Greeks into the sea. Years passed. Supplies stretched thin. Commanders on both sides tried new tactics. Some accounts describe duels between champions, attempts at negotiation, and moments where either side could have ended the conflict early, but the stalemate held. The war only changed when the Greeks used deception instead of force. The idea to leave a large wooden structure outside of the city came from the realization that brute strength wouldn't work. The Greeks pretended to retreat, sailing out of sight, and left the wooden construct as an offering. Believing the siege was over, the Trojans brought it inside their walls, and during the night, hidden Greek soldiers emerged and opened the gates, allowing their returning fleet to pour into the city. Troy fell quickly after that. Fire spread through the streets. Defenders fought where they could, but the surprise and the exhaustion of a decade-long siege made resistance difficult. The city that had once controlled a vital trade route was gone. The fall of Troy marked the end of major power in the region and signaled the collapse of the border Bronze Age soon after. Entire kingdoms across eastern Mediterranean fell or weakened within a century, creating a new wave of change that shaped the next era of history. The Battle of Kadesh stands as one of the earliest conflicts recorded in clear detail, mainly because both sides carved their versions into stone. The Egyptians and the Hittites were the two major powers of the late Bronze Age, and their rivalry stretched across borders, trade routes, and alliances. Kadesh, a fortified city near the Orontes River in modern-day Syria, sat right in the middle of their competing interests. Pharaoh Ramesses the Great led the Egyptian army north toward Kadesh with the goal of securing the region once and for all. His forces marched in separate divisions, each named after a major Egyptian god. They moved through long stretches of land, relying on scouts, supplies, and information from local people. The Hittites, under King Muwatalli, were already near Kadesh with a large army that included infantry, archers, and a powerful force of chariot warriors. The terrain around Kadesh gave an advantage to whichever army reached solid ground first. The Orontes River curved around the city, creating a natural barrier. Fields, hills, and pockets of forest dotted the landscape, offering places to hide troops. The Hittites used this terrain to set a large portion of their chariot forces behind a ridge where the Egyptians couldn't see them. Ramesses received reports that the Hittites were far away. These reports came from captured men who claimed to know the enemy's location. In reality, they had been deliberately sent to mislead him. Believing he had time, the pharaoh advanced with only one division close by, while the others were still marching miles behind. This set the stage for the ambush. As the Egyptian division near Kadesh began setting up camp, the hidden Hittite chariots suddenly charged over the ridge. Their goal was to hit the Egyptians before they could form a defense line. Bronze Age chariots were fast, loud, and dangerous. They carried crews with spears or bows, and their momentum alone could break formation. The ambush caused chaos. Egyptian soldiers scattered, trying to regroup. Ramesses found himself nearly isolated, surrounded by enemy chariots closing in from several directions. According to Egyptian records, he personally led counterattacks to buy time, rallying whatever troops he could gather. Even allowing for exaggeration, the situation was genuinely critical for him. Meanwhile, the other Egyptian divisions were rushing forward as fast as they could, alerted by messengers and the noise of battle. As they arrived, the Egyptians began to push back, forming tighter defense lines and forcing the Hittite chariots into more difficult ground near the river and city walls. The battle turned into a long, uneven struggle. The Egyptians regained control of their position, but the Hittites still held Kadesh. Neither side could knock the other out. The pharaoh avoided a disaster, but he couldn't capture the city. Muad'Dib kept his territory, but he failed to destroy the Egyptian army. The result was a stalemate, yet the battle had enormous impact. It pushed both empires to recognize the limits of their power. Years later, the Egyptians and the Hittites signed what is now considered the world's first surviving peace treaty, agreeing to mutual support, defined borders, and lasting cooperation. Kadesh wasn't a clean victory for anyone. Instead, it marked the moment when two great powers realized that constant conflict could threaten both of their futures. The battle itself was brutal, fast, and unpredictable, shaped by deception, terrain, and the speed of chariots racing across open ground. Act 4: The Battle of Marathon. The Persian Empire was the most powerful force on Earth during this period, stretching across the Middle East and into parts of Europe and Africa. When the city-state of Athens supported a small rebellion against Persian rule in Asia Minor, the Persian king Darius saw it as more than a nuisance. He viewed it as a challenge to his authority, and he prepared military response to bring Greece under Persian control. The Persian expedition landed on the plain of Marathon, a wide stretch of open ground about 25 miles from Athens. Their force included infantry, cavalry, and archers who had supported Persia expansion for decades. They planned to secure the beachhead, march inland, and capture Athens. The geography of Marathon provided enough space for the Persians to deploy their troops, but it also created a fixed point the Athens could target before the invasion spread. Athens sent a force of about 10,000 hoplites, joined by a small group from nearby Plataea. Hoplites were heavy infantry armed with long spears and large round shields. Their fighting style depended on close formation, where shields overlapped and created strong defensive lines. Every soldier relied on the discipline of the person beside them. The Athenians knew they were outnumbered, but they held one advantage the Persians couldn't easily overcome: terrain. The open plain near the beach was perfect for Persian cavalry, but the ground between the beach and surrounding hills narrowed in several places. If the Athens attacked before the Persians fully organized, they could limit the use of cavalry and force the fight into tight spaces. After days of waiting, observing, and preparing, the Athenians decided the moment had come. They had advanced toward the Persian camp in a wide formation. Instead of keeping a uniform depth across the entire line, they strengthened the sides and kept the center thinner. This was a risk, but it was intentional. When the two armies clashed, the Persian center began to push the Athenian center backwards, but the stronger Athenian wings held firm. As the Persian center advanced, the Athenians' wings curved inward, pressing the Persians from both sides. This move trapped them in a narrow space, making it harder for them to maneuver or retreat. The Persian force collapsed under the pressure. Soldiers near the shoreline were pushed into the marshes or into the sea as the Athenians closed in. It became one of the earliest examples of double envelopment on a large scale. The Persians retreated to their ships, and the Athenians quickly marched back toward their city, anticipating that the Persian fleet might attempt a direct landing near Athens. When the Persians arrived offshore and saw the Athenian army already in position, they abandoned the plan and sailed home. The victory at Marathon didn't end the conflict between Greece and Persia, but it changed the momentum. It showed that a smaller, disciplined force could defeat the most powerful empire in the world if the conditions were right. It also gave Athens confidence, strengthening its political influence and military reputation for years to come. Marathon became a turning point that influenced Greek culture, identity, and ambition. It was the first major step toward the later conflicts that would shape the future of the Western world. The Battle of Gaugamela. Alexander of Macedon had already defeated Persian forces twice, but the empire still stood. Darius, the Persian king, prepared for a final confrontation on ground of his choosing. He selected a wide plain near the village of Gaugamela in modern-day Iraq. The terrain was flattened and cleared so his chariots and cavalry could move without obstacles. It was the ideal battlefield for Persian strengths. Alexander marched east with a veteran army trained in tight coordination. His forces included the famous phalanx light infantry cavalry from Macedonia and Thessaly, and specialized units who had fought with him since early campaigns. Every soldier understood the stakes. This wasn't a raid or a border fight. It was a contest for control of the largest empire of the ancient world. The Persians arrived in massive numbers. Their army included cavalry from across the empire, archers, infantry, and chariots with blades attached to their wheels. Darius positioned himself at the center, surrounded by elite guards. His goal was to use the size of his force to stretch Alexander's lines until they broke. Alexander studied the battlefield carefully. He understood that a direct clash in the center would play into the Persian hands, so he planned to pull the Persian lines out of position. At dawn, the armies formed. Alexander took the right wing with his companion cavalry, while his general, Parmenion, commanded the left. The battle began when Alexander slowly moved his right wing forward at an angle, drawing part of the Persian cavalry away from their main position. Darius reacted, sending more cavalry to block the maneuver. This movement created a growing gap in the Persian center, a weakness Alexander had been waiting for. As the Persian cavalry stretched outward, Alexander suddenly swung his formation inward and charged straight at the gap with his companion cavalry leading the way. At the same time, the Macedonian phalanx advanced to support the attack. The Persians were caught off balance. Dust rose across the plain as both sides struggled for control. Darius, seeing Alexander's direct charge toward his position, faced a critical moment. If he stood his ground, he risked being surrounded. If he withdrew, the battle could collapse. Accounts say he turned his chariot and retreated, causing the soldiers around him to lose coordination. Without their king at the center, the Persian line began to break apart. But victory wasn't immediate. On the Macedonian left, Parmenion struggled against a heavy Persian cavalry attack. The fighting was intense, and for a moment it threatened to undo Alexander's progress. Once Alexander saw that Darius had fled, he redirected his forces to support the left wing, pushing back the Persian cavalry and preventing a collapse. With the Persians scattered and their leadership gone, the battle ended as one of the most decisive victories in ancient military history. Gaugamela broke the power of the Persian Empire. Cities surrounded, governors submitted, and within a short time Alexander entered Babylon as its new ruler. The battle showcased more than strength. It was shaped by planning, movement, timing, and the ability to read terrain under pressure. Alexander didn't win through numbers. He won by understanding how to make a larger army react instead of lead. Gaugamela marked the moment when Macedon replaced Persia as the dominant power of the ancient world. Across thousands of years, armies rose and fell, kings gambled their futures, and entire cultures shifted because of choices made on fields of dirt, stone, and grass. These 10 battles weren't just victories or defeats. They were moments when the direction of history changed in ways no one standing there could fully understand. Each battle carried consequences that rippled outward through generations. Borders were changed, dynasties rose, cities vanished, new alliances formed, entire peoples moved, rebuilt, or disappeared. While every battle was brutal, each one helped shape the world that would eventually emerge centuries later. And though the weapons and strategies belong to ancient and medieval times, the lessons still echo: leadership under pressure, the importance of terrain, the weight of decisions made in moments of fear, and how quickly the fate of millions can turn on a single command. These events may be far removed from the modern world, but their outcomes still helped create it. This has been Sleeping with History, where the past truly never rests, and neither do we.